Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche podcast. We got the whole squad of 4 here as we do have an interview with Chris MacFarland coming your way.
Whoa.
Before we get to that, though, you might want to chill a little bit. You're about to listen to the Avs GM talk about a whole bunch of topics. So pick yourself up a Coors Light. Go get yourself the beer made for chilling. And you can listen to Chris MacFarland in style. Enjoy yourself while you hear what the Avalanche GM has to say. Coors Light, delicious beer for you, brewed right here in Golden, Colorado. So go get yourself some. Actually, I always say this in this ad read where I'm like, go get yourself some. And I'm like, oh, wait, you don't even have to go get yourself some. They'll deliver it right to you. CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Instacart will ship your Coors Light right to your front door. You don't even have to go anywhere to get it with Coors Light. When it's time to chill, Coors Light is the beer I reach for. So when you want to hit reset, grab the beer that's made to chill. Get Coors Light delivered at CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. And then go make some bets on Bet365. Maybe do this after the interview. Whatever information you glean from Chris MacFarland can give you some insight on what to bet on come Avalanche playoff time, whether that's a Hart Trophy winner or a Conn Smythe winner or a Avs to win the cup or not. Maybe you come away doom and gloom. I don't know. I'm not going to judge. Either way, do it with Bet365. When you sign up with Bet365, be sure to use the DNVR 365 code. Bet $5 on any NHL game, you get $150 in bonus bets just for signing up with DNVR 365. Use that QR code on screen or download their app today. Get in with the betting on Bet365. Of course, you must be 21 or older, physically located in Colorado. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER today. I was not there, but you three interviewed Chris MacFarland today. How was it? Was it good?
CMac told us specifically no RyJo.
Yeah, he said, not that guy.
Yeah, he said, if RyJo's there, I won't be. It was good. No, honestly, very different from the conversation that we had with him in Vegas.
Yes.
Very different atmosphere, very different feel to the conversation where that was the first time he'd ever been on the pod. As a faithful listener of the show, we know that he was very excited and a little nervous to make his debut on our pod, but way different atmosphere this time. And I think it felt great. The conversation that we had with him, I thought was a lot more illuminating than you normally get out of an NHL GM on some of the topics. So it was great, and no RyJo, so it was really good.
That's what really sells it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was really open.
Good.
It was different from the rookie tournament and other MacFarland-specific interviews that I've seen before. He's usually pretty tight-lipped and calculated in his responses, and there's still some of that, but I think there was a more relaxed feel and openness to this interview.
Yeah, very generous with his time, and listen, when you're in hockey, it's emotions. And just rewind the tape to last night. You're down 4-0. You win 5-4. I think you would have given us like 4 hours today. You know what I mean? Because you feel so good and you're so excited. It was so fun to watch that game yesterday. So
it was pretty funny though. Before we started the interview, I asked him how much easier is life when you're on a 9-game winning streak, and he just was like, "It's always something, AJ."
I mean, after the game last night, I bet he felt pretty good about Jonathan Drouin, but I'm sure you guys talked to him about him a little bit.
We did, and you're never going to believe what he had to say about Gabe Landeskog.
I think I might have an inkling.
You don't know?
Yeah,
you weren't there.
You're right, I don't know, but I don't think that one's a particularly complicated answer. All right, we have people filtered in. Are we good? I don't want to make you guys wait anymore. Let's roll this interview with Avalanche GM Chris MacFarland.
Hello, everyone. DNVR Avs team here, joined by Avs GM Chris MacFarland. Chris, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, Megan. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of trade deadline discussion, even though we talked a little bit at the midway point with you. But now we've gotten a chance to see some of the early returns. And one of the things I wanted to kick off with was something you talked about with Jared Bednar, how he likes to deal with a bottom six rather than a rigid third and fourth line. And I wanted to know more generally what the relationship with Bednar is like when it comes to working as a GM with how he likes to coach.
It's a good question. It's we have a very good relationship. I've had the pleasure of working with Bedsy for a very long time. So he's as dialed in as anyone. What I like, and I think, not to speak for Joe, but for us, is we can talk hockey all day long, and there are times where we may have a suggestion or two or things, and we don't always agree, obviously, but we are always pulling on the same rope, and I think that's the crucial part, in any coach, sort of hockey ops relationship. So we've been around him long enough to know that we have a feel for the type of player that fits here and that works well within our group, both on and off the ice. So I would say it's a key part of what we do, and we're really fortunate to have Bedsy, not only for his on ice preparation and the work that he does, but in the off ice relationship as well that we enjoy.
I wanted to give you a chance to shout out some of the behind the scenes work that went into the deadline too, with the pro scouting staff and maybe any unsung heroes who helped land some of these players who fit in so well in Colorado. Yeah,
I think we have a really good group. We have, anytime we bring in a player, it's not just, where's this guy going to fit? A lot of things go into it, right? From his current contract to does he have, what rights do we have at the end of this current contract? What is the cap hit? What does it look like going forward? We use our analytics department in a lot of different ways. I won't sort of get into that specifically, but
are you sure AJ would love it?
Yeah, I think the one area where I particularly love it is, when Eric, sends in a report and it matches what our internal model says, that's awesome, right? But I like it when one is different than the other, and that allows for the discussion, that allows for the deeper dive, that allows for the pulling back the layers of the onion and to see why it could still work. I'm a big believer in telling me what a player can do. And when I watch a player, what can he do? Not really focus on what he can't do. I think that's important. But I think I'm really fortunate to have Kevin McDonald, Suzanne Borchert, our analytics staff. Arik Parnas, Dawson Spriggins. We've got a really they're good people, and that we're all pulling on the same rope. So. Our amateur guys, when we're bringing in a guy, we're doing digging to make sure the character part and that's going to fit in as well as the player, because we all know the player, but I want to know what he can do for us and make sure the fit is as dialed in as possible.
All right, this next one, the morning of the Duhaime trade, you guys were at practice.
Megan looked at you.
Yeah, she did. No, she's got a lot to get into.
Yeah,
so I don't step on any toes.
Oh my God, she does.
No, we don't have to do all of these.
Okay.
I was going to eliminate some of these. I wanted to ask, though, the morning of the Duhaime trade, you guys were at practice and you pulled MacKinnon over to chat. I was just assuming to let him know about the trade. Just hearing his name brought up as a catalyst for some of the new additions in the past. It's not a side of him that we get to see, but I wanted to know what MacKinnon's eye for the team looks like, his personal relationship with you.
Yeah, I don't recall that. Was it right at the bench?
It was right at the bench.
Yeah. I'd be lying if I said we don't check in with a few of our guys, right? The leadership core, if they may have played with a player or have a thought. We play Minnesota a lot, so I might have run it by. Is this guy hard to play against? Is he heavy? That type of thing. But Nate's really good. He's a player first and foremost. If you ask him a question, you will get an honest answer. May not always be the answer that you expect, but it will be honest and from his heart. So as a leader. With our team, we'll ask Nate or Gabe or Devon or Kel or Miko, an inordinate amount of things. It could be on the ice, it could be off the ice, it could be travel related, food. We'd be crazy not to tap into their sort of expertise with how dialed in. Cogs is another one. So he's been around a long time. So we'll use them as resources in a way to try and improve, even if it's just this much.
I'm curious. We're talking about primarily bringing players in, but do you also have those same conversations when you're potentially moving a guy out? And Ryan Johansson, Bowen Byram are guys that are no longer here. Did you at least have conversations with some of those guys about players exiting as well?
No. That puts, in my opinion, players in a tough spot. Because they're teammates, they're friends, and ultimately that's not something that we do regularly. The Bo trade was a really, really hard one to do. Again, we've touched on that. He's a really good hockey player, and he's a bubbly, energetic kid who brought a lot of life to our room. So that's something that I would certainly run by Joe, as a guy who lived it and lived the room and the importance of that, and certainly our coaches. But in terms of personnel moves, in terms of trades and sending guys out, I think that can only cloud things, and it puts teammates that have blood, sweat, and tears with somebody for a long time, puts them in a bad spot.
When it comes to the Bo deal, I'm curious if you'd be at least willing to get into. Like, when did you guys start having a serious conversation about it? Because it was two moves that you had to make there. It wasn't just Byram from Middlestat, and then you figure it out later. It was back to back. So when did you start having a serious conversation that might be something you would approach?
That's a good question. In terms of timing, like you start gathering your intel, and that's direct with the teams around the league. Maybe after, I find it's in the fall, and then it's Christmas time, and then it's sort of as everybody's heading into their mid-year meetings, you sort of try to get a picture of what they're thinking, what might be available, what they might be looking for, and I think this year probably no different than most years. A lot of teams are still involved in the playoff chase, from mid-year meetings till the trade deadline. So things crystallize and change over the course of those few weeks. But I think you try and through your own cap analysis and other teams' analysis, what their strengths are, what their positional strengths are, where the realistic fits might be. I can tell you that we didn't spend 1 second thinking about Byram for a rental type player. It had to be you're trying to thread a needle in that type of transaction. That's why they're so hard to do, and trades are really hard to do in the NHL. You need things to line up almost perfectly because for the reasons we mentioned, the cap. And it's not just looking at it, well, Megan's making $2 million this year and AJ's making $2.5 million. You can fit that in. But as we're going to find out, there's a cap next year as well, and you want to be able to see how does this impact? What does it look like going forward? In Katie Middlestat's example, he's a restricted free agent with ARB, so we had to do a very dialed in, detailed. What does his ARB case look like? It's a mixed RFA UFA contract. If you do term, what does that look like? What does that look like with Mikko's contract coming up and Kale's contract coming up? So nothing is done in a vacuum, and as much as we'd like to do the year-to-year thing and just do the math for this year, that's not how it's done.
How much information do you get from the league on what a salary cap landscape might look like over the next, say, 2 or 3 years?
That's usually discussed. We might get an update at a couple of the GM meetings, but more than, I think it's the Board of Governors meetings as well. It's all based on projections and revenue projections, as you know. So you get sort of a the 3 or 4% kind of year to year type of thing. And we have a number that we're working on for next year. But, as our friend COVID did, a few years ago, we would have thought it would have been significantly higher. And did that affect, decisions we had to make? You're darn right it did. So you have to be fluid, and you got to be flexible, and you got to be prepared for anything. But hopefully, we'll start seeing these incremental jumps, because 5 or 6 years ago, we didn't really worry about the day-to-day cap or the increases, but now it's a crucial part for the cycle of the organizational cycle that we happen to be in.
You mentioned the mid-season meetings that you guys went through. Those meetings, you guys always come up with your lists of priorities, opportunities to make your roster better. How would you say you addressed the needs that you guys talked about in those meetings?
I think our staff did a hell of a job, to be honest. I think we knew we had some holes that we wanted to address. Did we know we were going to be able to address them specifically? No. And I can tell you, we were prepared to do nothing. We were not going to just do something to address what the obvious was, a hole. We weren't going to do something that just made no sense in the big picture of things. And so a lot of work went into that, and our scouts were certainly are armed with sort of what we're looking to accomplish, and then we kind of we'll filter the information as we gather it internally, and here's what we're focused on. And then, as the weeks move on, hopefully we can pinpoint it a little better. But there are times where it's sort of this makes too much sense, and there are things that fall out of the sky on the day or two before trade deadline day. So you got to be prepared for everything, but that's why you do the work, and the scouts do the work day in, day out. So we are prepared by the scouting reports, our analytics department, and the salary cap analysis piece.
One of those holes was Logan O'Connor sized. What are some of the challenges of replacing what a player like that brings to the team?
Oh, yeah, it's significant. I think Logan is an Avs identity bottom six player, and I think, Megan, you hit on it your first question, not third, fourth line. There are times where Logan's played on our second line. There are times where he's played on our quote-unquote third line. But the way Coach wants 4 lines that when we go on the road, no matter who the other team throws out, he is armed, and we're weaponized, and we're not stressing about the matchup. And I think Logan O'Connor is a definitive player in that type of role, because he's not a guy that you're looking at it and you're looking at his traditional counting numbers of goals and assists, but how he impacts the game with his forechecking ability, his defensive acumen, the way he breaks up plays, tracking, and allows us to get puck possession and turn it the other way. And creating offense isn't always show itself in terms of goals, actually goals on the board. It's by playing in the offensive zone and cycling and rumbling around as Eric did, and killing the clock against the other team's skill, so that our guys, the puck is flipped out and we get teams into a 3-quarter ice game, and now we're rumbling. And that, to me, is an under the radar way how Logan is so good at creating offense. He wins races to get first touch, which is a really unappreciated skill, in my opinion. You get that first touch, and it allows you to get established possession and hopefully rumble around. And we all know Logan's a great penalty killer. The legs feed the wolf for him, and that very much is an Avs identity quality. We will miss him.
The other player I wanted to ask about is Pavel Francouz. What has the organization's communication been like with him this season, and do you have any update on how his rehabilitation is going?
Pav is, I haven't talked to Pav recently. Pav is, enjoying retirement, I believe. I use that word loosely, but there's no sense that we get that he's amping up or looking to play again. The injury was unfortunate. The timing of it was unfortunate, but he's back home and enjoying life, hopefully.
I want to go back to your answer a couple questions ago about the trade deadline when you were saying you were prepared to, if it didn't make sense, to stand path, right?
Yep.
But this is where the flowers are coming, but you didn't. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So this is where I believe from yourself and your group and the way you guys operate, it was a masterful trade deadline for me. And I'm saying this as a hockey fan. Forget about an Avalanche fan, because we know we're Avalanche fans, and this is a platform where it's Avalanche fan based. But I thought it was fantastic, and I think that with the season MacKinnon's having, with the season Makar's having, and I know like people are saying Makar, he slowed down a little bit. He's going to end up with 90 points. I mean, he's a pretty damn good player. But I thought it was just masterful. Like you said, you could have stand path, you could have stood around, but at the end of the day, you guys didn't. And everything fell into place. And I just want people to understand that it is so hard to make it happen. And that's why I say the flowers are here, because you guys made it happen. And I thought, and I know it's not fun to get rid of someone in your locker room, i.e. Bo Byron and things like that. People are human beings first and foremost. And even the guys making the deals or the coaches. But I thought it was so well done. Those guys, especially the guy on my left there, at the end, he was so excited to see a guy like Sean Walker coming in, and it was so fun to see. And I think the fan base was so pumped, and I think we're seeing dividends right now, because you're going on a run right now. And again, the ultimate goal here is to win the last game, and I think you guys touched on that. And I'm rumbling about my question, but do you find it harder and harder to do, especially when you're in that window of your core? And you can't do this every year, as you and I know, like, because you don't have the assets to do it every year, i.e. maybe last year you weren't in the same position to do what you guys did this year. But then again, it's a question of throwing you flowers, but it's also a question of how tough is it to make it happen?
Well, it's hard. I mean, we didn't go, certainly, from, Christmas time on, where our plan wasn't to do nothing, right? We wanted to improve the team. The guys' play dictated that. I think there's so much that goes into it, and Eric and Megan and AJ. It is very hard to make trades. There are so many things that have to line up. A need, a draft pick. We might be off our 4th round pick. There might be 5 teams, 4th round pick, that other teams are like, well, it might be 10 slots higher, so you're out. Yeah. We like this prospect, but not that prospect. So there's so many things that go into it, and our plan certainly wasn't to not try to improve the team, but we weren't going to try to improve the team by doing something that we felt did not make sense, so that we can say, well, we tried to improve the team. And I think that's the noise that is hard. It's challenging, but I think the preparation for, and it's not just for the Avalanche, it's every team in the league is doing this. From the assessments from their fall and Christmas and mid-year meetings to the deadline, we didn't try any less last year to try and do things, but if we would have done some of the things that were thrown our way, people would have had.
It wouldn't have made sense. It wouldn't have made sense.
So it has to make sense, and I think with this group and with the year we're having, the guys dictated that we would try to improve, and I think the ability to find a defenseman of Sean Walker's ilk, and then have the part 2 of that was crucial. Yeah. One without the other still might make sense. You still might go, but I think the tandem was what sort of made it make sense for us to say, we have to do this. It's the right thing to do.
And that's why it was masterful. That's why I'm being honest. Like, everything was done right by you guys. It was awesome. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I want to, not trying to throw a guy under a bus, obviously, but, Ryan Johansson, it did not work here. Do you guys, after you, sent him to Philadelphia, do you then have a conversation at some point about why it didn't work and then go through the processes that led you to make that decision?
Always. Yep, always. We knew our reports were what they were. We knew the player was coming off a cut injury. We were simply trying to hit on a guy that could be a number 2C without moving picks that we did not have or prospects that we did not want to move. It didn't work. Signing Val Nichushkin a few years ago worked. Signing Jonathan Drouin worked. You're not always it's not always gonna work. But if you don't take the swing, it can't work. But I think the important part for us was the exercise of why it didn't work. Was it? That's something we'll discuss. But I think where our group was really good was, okay, it's not working. We got to figure it out. We got to find a solution. It demanded attention, and we were able to find a workable solution. But I can say to you, Ryan, it wasn't from lack of trying or caring. It just didn't work. From his end, he gave us everything he had, but it just didn't. It wasn't working. So that's the best I can say to you. We'll cut and dissect it at the end of the year like we do with every player on our roster and moving forward. But I think at the time we did that, we were looking for a solution that could preserve some other assets for some other ways to down the road.
In looking at players that did and didn't work, it seemed like you knew at different times. With Tomas Tatar, you knew sooner that was perhaps not the best fit. And with Jonathan Drouin and his start here, some people were prepared to say early on that it wasn't going to work. How did you know that it was going to work with Drouin? What has your view of his evolution as a player been like throughout this season?
Well, Megan, I'd be lying if I said I knew it was going to work. I mean, I think everybody, the play he made yesterday, the hands, the skill, that stuff doesn't surprise anyone. Myself, our hockey ops people, our coaches, Joe. I think it's the diligence without the puck, the tracking, the turning, the transition game, the attention to defensive details. That's all Jonathan. That's Bedsy and our coaching staff, and Jonathan buying in to how we want to play. So he gets 100% of the credit for that. The skill has never been, his challenge or his issue. He's been a guy that's relied and made a living on his hands and his skill. But checking is not optional with the Avalanche, as you guys know. So, I think that's the part that our coaches and our players and ultimately Jonathan Drouin get credit for. With Thomas, I think that, that was a situation where, was it September where we signed him, or late August?
Yeah, it was late.
Where it made sense to us on a swing to add a depth forward, a veteran guy who's been a good player for a long time. And I think, with Thomas, he just wasn't able to get on the power play. Our power play is it's got a lot of talent on it, and there's not a lot of supplementary minutes, and I think that's something that was obvious for me, and I felt like I needed to find him a more workable solution that would enable him to maybe be put in those situations a little bit more, and I think it's worked for him as well.
With how well Drouin has fit, do you envision a future in Colorado?
Again, these are the questions. We would love to be able to afford everyone, but there's as you know, there's this thing called the salary cap, and I'd be lying to you if I said we can bring these guys, all of them, back. I tell our coaches, don't fall in love with players, because looking at it today, we're capped out. And the challenge for us is going to be, unfortunately, answers that, timing-wise are maybe difficult to ascertain because of, Gabe Landeskog's situation. So that's the reality, but that's the analysis we do, or certainly that keeps me up at night. But that's for, months down the road. I think we're gonna, hopefully, these guys are focused on the task at hand, and then, come, closer to draft time, we'll obviously have those discussions, and if something can make sense, or if there's a creative way, and again, that's the challenge of the cap.
If Landeskog, if Gabe does not play any games for you at all this year, postseason, nothing. Even if you guys make a deep run, nothing. How do you go into the summer planning to have him back next year? And because if you lose a Jonathan Duran under the assumption that Gabe is back and Gabe can't come back next year either,
that's the challenge.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the challenge. I will say this: Gabe Landeskog deserves every opportunity to continue on this path. That he's on. He's. This isn't just a guy that's worn the sweater. This is our captain. This is our heart and soul of the organization, and he deserves our full support, and which he'll continue to get. And those those every week, every month, there's going to be more information gleaned. But yes, there is a definite there's an uncertainty. There's been an uncertainty, and we've had last year we were operating under, well, hopefully he's going to come back at Christmas. Hopefully he's going to come back in March. And were those challenges at the trade deadline? Yes. This year it's different. We knew he was going to miss 12 months. So it's a challenging file, but we're all obviously first and foremost pulling for him. And again, we'll get those, hopefully get more information as we move along the next few months.
I'm good. I mean, if I can just wrap it up, is more like getting to the top is hard, as and you guys were there 2 years ago, and then staying up top is a challenge with the cap and everything. And how fresh, like, you guys keep things fresh. We were talking about the trade deadline. That's keeping things fresh. That's giving new life to your core. Again, it's not even a question. It's more, we want to wish you the best of luck with what you guys have done. And a wise man told me once, like, too, if you swing 10 times and you hit 7 times, you're winning the batting title. But you don't harp on the 3 that you missed. You know what I mean? And I think that you guys have swung and you've hit on mostly everything. And again, now this spring, things are fresh, things are clean, things are awesome. And if you're an Avalanche fan that are listening right now, I do believe that this is exciting. This is going to be a fun run, and we want to wish you the best of luck.
Yeah. We appreciate that. I think, this is a special time for, being a Colorado Avalanche fan, with the likes of Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar and Mikko Rantanen. And, these are players that don't grow on trees. And it may be another 50 years before you see the type of talent that, you don't want to take it for granted, Eric, as you guys know, and Megan and AJ. This is... They're elite at what they do. They're really good people, and they're passionate for the logo on and off the ice. So, I pinch myself sometimes. You get to watch these guys do what they do, but it'll be a fun next few weeks in the regular season, and then hopefully a good stretch in the playoffs.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris MacFarland, Avs GM, on the DNVR Avs podcast.
Great interview, y'all. I always find it interesting, especially when you hear Chris MacFarland talking about some of the same things we talk about here on the show, and I'm sure people talk about at home on their couch. So sometimes you might be a little bit off the mark. Sometimes you might be onto the same things that the Avs staff is on too. So always super interesting to hear from that side of things. And it's always nice to have a little bit of a snack when you hear about the big decisions getting made in hockey. So make sure you hit up Circle K. Go get your snack on with their Inner Circle rewards. Use that QR code on screen or go to circlek.com/innercircle today to get your rewards. Get 25 cents off a gallon on your first 5 fill-ups, a bunch of snack deals, including up to 5 free Polar Pops. You can text DNVR to 31310 right now to get a free Polar Pop of any size. So go jump on it with Circle K. Go get your snack on. Again, use those Inner Circle rewards. Use that QR code on screen to get part of the Inner Circle today. Once you have your snacks going, you know what? It's fun to play a little bit of sports yourself, too, instead of just watch sports. So hit up Volo Sports, where you can go join the largest sports social media company out there. You can join in with Volo. You can get in on all sorts of action, ranging from bowling all the way to flag football and everything in between when you sign up for the Volo Pass for just $20 a month. And in fact, if you sign up right now with code DNVR3, you get it $10 off for the first 3 months. So that's just $10 a month for unlimited access to pickups and drop-ins, as well as tournaments, as well as large other discounts across the Volo Sports everything. Go check them out. You can even travel with the Volo Pass, get access to other cities if you are a traveling person. You can still play with Volo today. So use that QR code on screen right there, or download the Volo Sports app today and use code DNVR10 to get that $10 off your first 3 months of the Volo Pass. Third period, I suppose, of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. You guys got to talk in person there. Obviously, I wasn't there, but what were your major takeaways from this interview? Do you think Chris MacFarland is feeling like he's in a good spot with the Avs right now?
Do you want me to answer the first question or the second question?
I'll leave it open.
The first, my number one takeaway is, boy, Jonathan Drouin is not going to be here next year. Like, we talked about it after, but there was some candidness when it was brought up where he was just like, we're capped out.
Yep.
So that's not just Jonathan Drouin, but I think given that he's kind of a hot topic of conversation right now, he's the easiest, the obvious candidate of
the pending UFAs that's going to get the largest raise this offseason.
Making $825K right now, not going to make that next year. So he's having the kind of season that, we talked about it the other day. It would be really hard for the Avs to find a way to bring him back, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I think should be feeling good. His team's won 9 in a row, and it's in first place and could win the President's Trophy and another division title. And the best home team in the NHL this year is vying for home ice throughout the entire playoffs. Yep. It definitely sounds like he's proud of the work that his front office has done to put themselves in this position.
Reflecting on how he answered your question before we went live about how he's feeling after 9 in a row, that sometimes that is almost more challenging. Like, there's never really an easy moment. It leads me to believe that he feels good, not great. Like, the only time that he'll ever feel great is when they're lifting the cup in summer. And until that point, he's just in this state of, I think, genuine belief, though. I really do think there's a confidence in what they did at the deadline to make this team better, and the early returns are good. So I think there's absolutely optimism around what the team is doing and where they're heading. But he strikes me as someone who doesn't like to get ahead of himself either. And that was sort of my takeaway from the interview, that there's a lot of belief in what they've created, but now it's up to them to go out there and do the thing.
And I think he's a good person. Translates to the locker room and the relationship with Bednar and Joe. And there's been a lot of turnover, right? You know what I mean? And their staff. And that makes a big difference. There's a comfort level. And I don't think Chris takes it for granted, the fact that there is world-class talent here. You said it, Rantanen, Makar. And it's pretty special to see, I think, as a fan and what you're witnessing every night, but as a manager too, you're seeing it every day. You know what I mean? And you don't take it for granted. And I don't think Chris takes it for granted. And I think that it translates to the relationship he has with the players. So, yeah, it was fun. It was a great time. And I thought he was very gracious with his time. It was fun to catch up with him.
I do think, given MacFarland's career path, spending so long as an AGM in Columbus, where they just
really don't have star players.
They drafted at the top every single year, and the only guy they ever had to show for it was Rick Nash.
Yep.
And then he comes to Colorado. His first year in Colorado, they bought him out. They 48 points.
Yep.
And then
the turnaround starts.
Everything that's happened after that has been fun. I think it would be impossible to believe that he would take it for granted all of a sudden that he's been in the NHL so long, he's been working in front offices for so long that he doesn't recognize the moment that he's in, and that his first GM job where he's in the big chair, he inherits Cale Makar and Nathan MacKinnon. Like, he doesn't have to spend the first couple of years of his GM tenure trying to find those cornerstones. He has them. Now his job is primarily fill in the blanks. You know, you're going to pay those guys a ton of money. Those are the easy decisions that he will make. Keeping Nathan MacKinnon, keeping Nathan MacKinnon on that deal that he did that made him the highest paid player in the NHL for 1 year exactly. Easy decision to make. Yep. Whatever Makar is getting on his next deal, Rancing, you know, those are the easy decisions. But it's having the stones to trade a Bowen Byram for a Casey Middlestat. Knowing that, hey, which guy might be more valuable in the long run, which one's going to be more valuable to us. And being able to do something like that. We'll see how it works over the course of the long term, but
really good insight in that
year 2 on the job, I feel like, is much better. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't want to cut you off. I just, with the Byram Middlestat thing, really good insight confirming what I think we all expected, but what some people weren't sure about. It was always going to be for a long-term piece that Byram got moved.
And we always talked about it in the lead up to it. You're not trading Byram for a rental. There's no discussion about moving Byram for somebody that's going to leave. It would have been incredibly foolish. I will say, I did not believe him for 1 second when he said we were willing to stand pat and do nothing. Of course, doing nothing beats doing something really, really silly for the sake of just being able to say you did it. They would have done so. I fully believe they would have found an avenue. They would have done something. They would not have just said, "Okay, cool. We'll have this season play out 100% just like this." When you so clearly were missing one thing in particular.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just it was like, you have to say this, but sir, I do not believe you.
No, I'm not buying it for a second, because they didn't just do one thing, even though it feels
They
like
did 4 things.
right. Even though it feels like Walker is inherently connected to moving out Byram.
Yeah.
I think there is a reason that there was an e-bug on the ice for that morning skate where Justus Annunen was temporarily moved to the HL as a paper transaction, because I think there was another move in the works to get a goaltender across the finish line. So, like, that communicates to me they were never going to stand pat. There were multiple things that they were looking to address, to include bringing Zach Parise into the fold prior to the deadline.
Fair point.
Moving Tomas Tatar to Seattle. They've been tinkering this whole year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think they had plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and then plan E was Stan Path. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean?
Plan E.
You know what I mean? I think they went to plan A, and then they nailed plan A. Because you couldn't have done anything better.
Sure feels like if that wasn't plan A, I would love to know what was.
No, this was plan A, and they executed it. It's not easy to do. There's a lot of moving pieces. That's why, you know, my question to him was not even a question. It was more like a freaking thesis on how great they did, because they did great. You know what I mean? And they nailed it.
I think
And
it's
it
an
had to be
interesting
plan A.
conversation that's plan A too, though, right?
Yeah.
Because you probably watched plan B and plan C fall to the wayside as the Henriques of the world and the Sean Monahans of the world got moved.
Hey, listen, there's a lot of pressure in that seat. There's a lot of pressure in that chair. Avs are a team. They work as a team with Joe and their staff. And like I said, and he brought up K-Mac today, right? Kevin McDonald. Awesome guy.
Love him.
Awesome, man. So it's like a lot of teams work together, but these guys truly work together. You know what I mean? And again, we can always say you can be about winning, or you can say you're about winning. Those guys like work together, and there's different front offices. There's only 32 chairs in the world. It's a hot seat. It is a hot seat. It is not easy to be in that seat, and those guys, I think, have nailed it. And I think their group is solidified now, and it's been like this for a few years. And I do believe that it was fun to see them nail their supposedly plan A, right? You know what I mean? We're assuming, because boy, oh boy, I'd like to know what plan A was if this wasn't plan A.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Awesome, right? You know, so
Eric, I wanted to ask you, because multiple times throughout this interview, MacFarland talked about first MacKinnon and his willingness to give honest answers on whatever it is the Avs organization might be looking at.
So it's the only thing that guy gives.
Yeah, but also conversation about Gabe Landeskog and how important he is not just to the team but to the organization as a whole. You've been on the player side and on the front office side of that. How normal is the Colorado structure there that seems to have so much connection with the players and the front office?
Well, I think it has to be in unison. You know what I mean? It has to. It has to be in sync. It starts at the top. I'll say it again. Ownership here is great because they let them be. And I forgot, I was going to ask CMac about that. And I know his answer would have been what I'm trying to say here. Sometimes it's, and I've heard people lately about the trade deadline last couple of weeks, former managers, and they talk about the difficulties of when they were managers in the ownership group they were part of. I mean, above them, and it's not easy. You make trades and it gets nixed by them, and it's here. It's awesome. The Kroenke Sports Entertainment Group has been great. They let people do their jobs. They let people be. And again, the results are there. If the results are not there, maybe it's a different discussion, right? But the results have been there. They let them be. They're there for support. But at the end of the day, they're not going to go and nix player movement or things like that. So I think it's very important to be in unison. Starts at the top. And then from the management to the coaches. And I always say coaches, hey, listen, I've been on dysfunctional teams. I have been. It's not fun. But I think as a manager, you have to let the coaches coach. And you have to let the players play, for me, like the locker room is a sanctuary. It's for the players. It's not for ownership. It's not for, this is their home. This is and as a manager to come down and tell the coach what to do. I'm sure there's a time and a place and a meeting place for that, but it's certainly probably not in front of the players. And, that's how shit starts. But I think it's important to have the players' involvement too, especially your core group. I remember Avalanche 1.0. I mean, used to call them breakfasts. You know what I mean? Like, I got called up for breakfast in the Godfather's room for, at the hotel. And it usually is, as a player, I don't care if you make a shit ton of money or you're just part of it. And I think it's important to make you feel that you're part of it. And they want to know what the pulse is of the room, and they want to. So when you're all in sync and all in unison, I think it's important to get the input from the players, and especially your trusted leadership group. That's why they are the leadership group. So,
I also thought just that answer that MacFarland gave, in particular about Gabe Landeskog, has earned the right to give this as much effort as he wants in this recovery process and to come back and continue his career. He's given so much to this organization. We owe it to him, who he has been as a person, as a leader, as a player, and at times as a face of the franchise, to let him go through this process and to ensure that if at some point he's ready to come back, we've got a spot for him. And I think that's an important answer because I think it's really, really easy for people like us, people on the internet, to just go, he's done, spend his money, move on. Doesn't matter. Name a new captain, who cares? Haven't had him for 2 years, what do you need him for? And it's good I think it's a good reminder that there is loyalty to some degree in this business of, in this case in particular, it's not what have you done for me lately. It's everything that he has given to this organization has earned him runway to try to make it, to continue his career. Certainly part of that is because they believe he could still be an impact player when he is healthy, if he is healthy ever again. But I felt that was an important answer because I do think it is extremely reductive for people to just, in a really rare instance with no track record on the surgery, there's no lengthy enough track record of success or failure for anybody to genuinely feel any kind of way about it. And it is grating for me personally to look at people online that pop in my mentions all the time and are like, can't wait for him first game one.
Or just making stuff up about it.
Or he's never playing again. People are so delusional. You need to get over it. Nobody knows. Gabe Landeskog doesn't know.
Yep.
The doctors who did the surgery and he's checking in with every day, nobody knows. And that puts the Avs in a really tough bind this summer, which is why I wanted to ask CMac about it. And he was, that's the challenge, AJ. That is the challenge. But I loved that he went to bat for his guy in that moment as well and said he's earned that right.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that however long this postseason run will be for the Avs, we hope it's good and lengthy, and we hope that we get, for Gabe Landeskog's own edification, he gets clarity on what his future holds.
Yeah, definitely. Just as a person, Landy deserves that. We did have producer Drew from SDPN in the chat pontificating perhaps on whether this year's Avalanche team is deeper than the 22 team. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on that, but also how much credit does Chris MacFarland deserve for building a team that's even in that conversation?
I think he deserved credit for building the team of
For
the
sure.
2022 year.
But to put it back into that realm.
Because he's now in the seat as GM. He
Yes.
definitely takes a great deal of credit, but he shouted out the whole team too that has helped bring this team together, to include the leadership in the room as well as the pro scouting staff, analytics staff. Obviously, it's more than just single-handedly Chris MacFarland, but there's a lot of credit that is due for this year's team. I think it's really hard in today's cap era to make a team as good as the 2022 team, to be honest with you. I think, though, on paper, it is very similar. Because even in looking at the playoffs, there are games where Alex Newhook isn't playing. There are games where I don't remember if Andrew Cogliano was on the fourth line, but he's
Andre Burakovsky was a healthy scratch in that postseason.
A healthy scratch. I think we're going to be looking at a similar situation, maybe not Burakovsky caliber, but with Kovalenko eventually coming to the Avs, they're going to have to make decisions like Andrew Cogliano as a scratch. Yep. And I think that is a testament to the depth that they have added to this team. I still don't think it's exactly where it was in the 2022 year, but we also didn't have this version of Nathan MacKinnon. And it was pretty spectacular in 2022. But I think the rise of what MacKinnon has been, Mikko Rantanen had a 50-goal season last year, and he's continued on a 100-point pace.
We'll almost certainly get there.
Almost certainly will get there. Even though we've had our frustrations with him at points this season, he's still also quite spectacular.
Yep.
It's important to acknowledge then, even Val Nichushkin, who I understand is a difficult player to evaluate just because he wasn't available in the postseason last year.
When he is.
Exactly. Even how he started this season, his points pace rivaled his cup year. And so there's some players that are just continuing to have career years that I think that is the difference maker and the difference between the 2022 team and this year.
Well, to answer producer Drew, the question for me, I like this team better, and I'll tell you why. Megan just touched on it a little bit there, and I've played with guys they've won the first cup and they won that second one. They even play better in that second one, and then they play better in that third one. I would just use Patty Waugh for example. It becomes a drug, you know what I mean? It becomes you become addicted to it. And I do believe McKinnon's going to have an even better postseason than he did 2 years ago, and that makes you dangerous. And I do believe Makar, obviously a Conn Smythe, I think he'll be up to the task and even better, because you know how grueling it is. You hear the Edmonton Oilers stories back then about going by the locker room of the Islanders and realizing what it takes to win. You know what it takes to win because it's fresh. It's been 24 months. So they're going to be dangerous. Their core guy will be even more dangerous. I like the additions of the trenches, like the Trennan and Duhaime, and I do believe Drouin can be your Burakovsky, and you know what I mean. There's a lot of comparisons. Goaltending, we I think they need to have George be like Kemper, just good, right? Just be good, right? Be good, do the job, and just don't be bad. Just go do your job. So I do believe, and this is where I'll give credit to Chris and the crew, and it's always about a group there. They always talk about it. Nobody takes the accolades, but how many people are back from 2022? There's not, what is it, 11?
It's dwindled.
Is it just, it's something like that. Like there's a lot of faces that have been gone, right? So they've kept it fresh, and they've kept it, and again, with the deadline, the additions and everything, I do believe that this is a core group that, and again, 90 point as a 2C cadre, you'll never see that again. That's probably where the big difference is. But then again, we've never seen Middlestat in the postseason. We'll see where that can go. But I do believe, if I have to give an answer, I like this team, this edition, better than the one from 2 years ago.
I think the 22 team is better, but I think that it's a really good point that all of Colorado's best players are better today than they were 2 years ago. Because it's not just MacKinnon and Rantanen and Makar, but it is Nichushkin, it is Lehkonen, it is. I mean, even going down the line, Ross Colton this is the best Ross Colton has ever been as an NHL player. So
Healthy Josh Manson.
You keep going down that line, and you can match up which of the guys who are back from that championship team are worse? It's like Cogliano.
Jack Johnson, maybe minorly or something.
Yeah, maybe Jack Johnson's a little bit better, a little bit worse. It kind of depends on the day, right? Like, none of the primary pieces, though. And yeah, Kadri is the one that you look at and you say, it's definitely worse. But it's so much better than it was.
Well, we don't know.
Middlestat's been pretty good, at least production-wise.
The guy had an 87-point year. Kadri did. Like, give me a break, man.
I hear you. I'm just saying, Middlestat's doing a pretty decent impression since he's come to Colorado.
He's closed the gap enough that I think it's a conversation. But regular season Darcy Kemper significantly outplayed.
That's true.
Regular season Alexander Georgiev.
Yeah.
The nice part is that the bar isn't incredibly high for postseason Georgiev to outplay Colorado's goalies that year. I think defensively, that team was better.
And I'm going to shut my yap on because I was so big for so many years. And I learned my lesson last year with Jack Eichel. This guy can't play. Can't elevate his game. Playoffs, boy, did he shut my yap. He was awesome. And I don't know the guy. I'm just, not because it's a BU Terry. I'm just saying. But
it helps.
Casey Middlestat. Could say the same thing about him.
Came from the same organization.
He's never freaking played in the playoffs. I don't know how he's going to react.
Yeah, you have no idea.
You have no idea. But we'll cross our fingers, and it sure looks good right now. And then we'll go from there.
On that note, with it hopefully being one of the last snowy days in Denver.
Ever.
I don't know about ever, but for this season, get yourself ready to get out to Infinity Park in Glendale. Have a good time out in the nice spring weather. Go catch yourself an American Raptors game. Tickets are just $10, and kids 12 and under get in free. Always a good time to go see the American Raptors. They're playing a homestand right now at Infinity Park. It's a great place to go out. Honestly, even if the Raptors aren't playing, just go have a day on the town at Infinity Park. It's an awesome little area to go out and see and enjoy yourself for a lunch picnic or something like that. It's a great place. Can't recommend it enough. For the American Raptors, go to AmericanRaptors.com to get your tickets. They also stream all their games live on AmericanRaptors.com. Plus, you can follow the DNVR Rugby podcast, where our guy Colton Strickler will talk you through everything, whether it be the Raptors season, whether it be learning the game with 101 rugby pods, or interviews with every single person in the rugby scene. He talks to literally everybody. It's amazing, all the dudes he gets on his show. So go check that out today. Again, AmericanRaptors.com to get tickets. And then we do have one super chat, it looks like. $10 from Drew, who says, always love to see Megan and the Bummers all together. As always, love and appreciate all the work you guys give all of us. 3 more months. Let's effing go.
Don't put it that way.
It feels like a long time.
Yeah, I don't want to think about it in those terms.
That's a quarter of a year.
Yeah, don't put it like that. Let's just say let's have a long postseason.
Yeah.
Hopefully so. In the immediate, still a ways to go before the postseason, but that does not mean a lack of content from us. We actually have a Die Hard piece coming out this evening. For those of you that want to hear more about Sean Barons, we have something coming your way. But you do have to be a diehard to get access to this one. So
We
consider
did
supporting
also
us.
talk to Chris MacFarland today about Sean Barons, but we aren't going to tell you what he said.
There you go. You gotta get the behind the scenes access for that one. So go check that out when it goes live later today on the DNVR.com. Again, the best way you guys can support us is by becoming a diehard on there. And you guys get a ton of perks. You get a free shirt with your diehard membership for the year. You get discounts here at the bar. You get discounts at the DNVR locker for new shirts. You get access to the Discord. Tons of other stuff as well. So go check us out at the DNVR.com. Consider supporting us there. Also, thank you to the chat for over 100 likes on an off-day show. That's pretty cool.
Nice.
It's usually a thing reserved for post games, so we appreciate y'all a ton. We also appreciate Chris MacFarland for coming on the show and the Avalanche organization. Very awesome of them to give us that access. So
Excited for another
More to come.
Av.
Yeah.
Another Av to be on the show coming soon.
hopefully on this set.
Hopefully.
So should be some more fun content coming y'all's way. Thank you again for listening today. We are obviously back tomorrow, game day, pregame, watch along, postgame. Be sure to tune in for all of that as the Avs look to make it 10 in a row. We didn't even come up with what 9 was. At this point, they're just an Avalanche indefinitely, I think.
God.
So,
You get to 10, you're an Avalanche.
You're an Avalanche.
The Avalanche can be the Avalanche.
we are out of here, and we will... well, no shots out of the off day. Those are winner shots. I don't know if we won anything today,
Stop
but
trying to get me drunk, guys.
we will be back tomorrow, and we will talk to you guys then.
We all silly like the mayor.